I think particularly, and I've been thinking about this in relationship to those of you in schools, parishes to a certain extent, but I think even more so with schools. The parents of the children in your schools, for the most part, are younger adults who have a real deep desire to make a positive impact. And so just doing this has the potential for engaging your parents in a way that you've not had in other situations. I really believe that strongly. I was telling Damien, there is a wonderful ongoing study of millennial giving that's called the Millennial Impact Report. And every year, this organization studies the giving practices, not just financial giving, but the time and investment and financial giving among millennial donors. And what they're finding is that younger adults want to know that they can make an impact. And the reality is, I think for all of us, we know our time is precious. You know, and we have so many things vying for our time and attention and investment. And you know, Damien and I were talking about, you know, if you look just at the number of nonprofit organizations that have, you know, multiplied in the last 10 years, people have lots of ways in which to give of themselves. And so what's happening is we need to help our people to recognize that they have the potential to have a real impact in their local community and more broadly. And doing that really has a great impact on our parishes and schools that we might not otherwise even experience. And so I think that's important for us to keep in mind as we continue to think about this. Anything else? I want to thank you. Wow, look at all of what you've already thought through. And I think we're just starting to now to make a slight shift from the why theologically to some of the values. So why would this be of benefit to parishes and schools? And that's what we're going to think about next. First of all, just, you know, we all have already said this is truly important. And it's important for us as people of faith, but it's also important for us as human beings. You know, this is simply what we need to be about. And it is a way for us to live the mission of Christ in the world. And that's, you know, again, we can get caught up in all of the details, but the bottom line, this is who we're called to be as people in our world now and for the rest of time. So this is something that's really important. And in some ways, it's something that people expect us to be considering. There's an expectation, as you said, there's a longing. People want to be responsible. They want to make a positive contribution. And we need to help them to tap into that longing. Years ago, I was doing some work in my own parish around small faith communities. And we were talking about how to begin new small faith communities. And this trainer said something that has stuck with me for the last 15 years. She said, you know, people have a thirst. People have a thirst for God. People have a thirst to be connected to something that's bigger than themselves. And she said, Jesus teaches us that we're the salt of the earth. But sometimes we have to add our salt in order for people to recognize their thirst. And I think that's part of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be adding salt to an already existing thirst. People are thirsty for impact and for meaning and for making a positive contribution. And by way of all of what you all are going to be thinking about together, you're going to be adding that salt that helps people to do what they already are longing to do and to be. So importance, that's one of the values. Secondly, engagement. And I want to just help us to think a little bit about what does it mean to engage people. When you hear that word engagement, what do you think of? What does that mean for you? What does it mean to engage people?
To get people involved.
To get people involved.
Connection.
A connection. Commitment. Yeah, and so when we engage people, we're helping them to have a deep rootedness with us, to recognize that they are part of this process, that they belong with us in this endeavor. And what the research on engagement helps us to recognize is that people have this deep longing, and when they are able to contribute with each other, when we can help them to build relationships with each other and with this larger group, those relationships really have much more meaning than what we might imagine. The engagement research on the parish end actually very stunningly shows that when people have a deep rootedness in their faith community, they're more likely to give of their time, they're more likely to give of their financial resources, they're much more likely to invite other people into the process, and in fact, belonging leads them to believing. That's what the research shows, that belonging within our parish communities actually enhances the way in which people live their faith. In schools, the research says that when parents and faculty members and students have a deep sense of belonging within the school, academic achievement is higher, faculty retention is higher, there's less absenteeism on the part of both faculty and students, and there are fewer safety incidences. When we're really deeply connected in our organizations, we're going to be a little bit more careful because we think of one another as family. And so, when we think about this in relationship to this particular conversation, as you start to think about your teams, your sustainability teams, but then the wider community that you are a part of, the way in which we bring people into this vision can really make a difference for our organization, for our school, for our parishes. And it makes an impact in people's lives in ways that we can't right now even imagine. You know, I was thinking about the times in my own parish and school experience when, and for me, honestly, I think some of the time it was just I knew that I couldn't do it by myself because I didn't have the time to be able to do it by myself. So out of necessity, I would bring people in, and all of a sudden, I found something taking life in a way that I never imagined. That's what we're going to be thinking about as we think about these teams that you'll be putting together. How do you engage people in this process in such a way that they come to own it as much as you do? And they begin to help us to creatively look at the possibilities. You've got a lot of experts in the room who are partnering with you, but I know that you also have experts in your parishes and in your schools that are going to be able to come into this. They're going to see something in a parish newsletter or the bulletin or a parent email blast or whatever it is, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, look at what we're doing. Look at what we're doing. I want to be part of that. And so how do we set up an environment in which this process helps us to engage our people? I think that's incredibly important. It's a real value to us. People want to be able to contribute with meaning, and they've been given talent with which to do that. And so part of our responsibility is to help people to be part of solutions, to be part of creating something new and wonderful and exciting that's going to help us to bear all of these elements of sustainability out in our faith and our school communities. Another value I believe that we need to be aware of is that, you know, this is going to enhance our impact in a positive way. And in such a way that we're going to know that we're doing something that really truly is right. You know, there's an awful lot of, we've always done it this way, or we tried it before, and, you know, and so as many times as we can anticipate, as you just did, the better, because we're paving the way for a different future. Yeah. I think it'll be important to be attuned to the response of people. And, you know, some of the people who are initially excited, we can bring into this vision. Those who are reticent, we're going to have to bring them along a little bit more slowly, you know. And some people we may actually just have to say, you know what, this is the path we're going down. Because there are always going to be a few that just are not going to go there. Yeah, but be attuned to that, because I think you're going to find more enthusiasm than what you might imagine. So there are values in the importance, there are values in the potential for engagement, there are values in enhancing impact, and then this is the one that I need help from the TMS folks. There also are potential fiscal values that I can't speak to, but you guys can. One additional thought, and we've already talked just a little bit about this, but I think this is just helpful for us to keep in mind. You know, there is this potential for increased loyalty among our parishioners, among our faculty, among our parents, because we're doing something that people clearly value and know the importance of. And that's huge. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the details of every day that we can lose sight of the fact that these things that may seem small at times, we're going to recycle. You know, almost everybody recycles at home. Why wouldn't we recycle in our parishes or our schools? Well, there are extra steps that we have to go through, but the reality is that's also creating an environment where people have a much deeper sense of being part of something that they long for, that they want for. Stronger public image. You know, when I first talked to Michael, I said, you know, from the standpoint of schools, I can't imagine too much more that would positively contribute to the image that we have in our local communities than a sustainability process. Our younger adults who are parents, our local community people want to know that we're doing something for the present that also is going to have an impact on the future. How we teach our children about this is going to be paramount. You know, I worked with a pastor for a dozen years. He and I actually were at the high school before we were at the parish together, and I really respect this fellow a lot. But we had a group of parents who came to us and said, you know, we want to start recycling at the school. And his initial response was absolutely not, because we have to pay extra for the recycling service and we're just not going to do that. Well, let me tell you, the parents came back and they said, we'll pay more tuition to fund the recycling bins. This is not an option. And he really, I mean, I think he was astounded by the strength of their response. And so, sure enough, the next year we had recycling bins. And then one thing leads to another to another. We have to find those small ways that we start, and then we have the longer term conversations to be having together. Benefits. And again, these folks know much more about some of these benefits than I do, so I'm going to ask them to chime in. We've already mentioned that we're going to be reducing energy and resource expenditures, and that's an important element of this. Increased productivity. You know, I think especially I was thinking of this in terms of schools. You know, as the faculty begins to recognize that each of them has a part to play in this, it's going to change the dynamic within the school and parishes as well. parish, and part of this is going to be bringing the parishioners into the picture as well as the staff. And how we do that really is going to make, I can think of dozens and dozens and dozens of stewardship conversations in my own parish as we really, we started by talking with people about stewardship. But the more we taught stewardship, the more the parishioners began to say, well, is that a good steward? Is that what a good steward would do? Is that stewardship of the financial resources? Is that stewardship of creation? And that makes for an environment in which everyone is contributing in the ways that they can. Reduce hiring and attrition expenses. And I've got those in quotes because in parishes, in schools, absolutely. The more engaged your school faculty is, the fewer faculty members you're going to have to replace year to year. In parishes, much of the work is being done by parishioners, but it's the same situation. When we engage our parishioners and they find the right fit in terms of their interests and in terms of their talent, they're going to stay with that ministry longer. They're going to stay with the parish in a different kind of way. And I think that's really something that's hidden sometimes in what we do. But we know it. I know Bob here is a parishioner who's here because he's deeply rooted in his parish community, and Father probably asked him to take this on, and here you are. But you're here because you know that you can make a contribution within the parish and in the larger picture. And that happens in all sorts of ways. People stick around. I mean, that's the reality. People stick around when they're able to contribute in a meaningful way in any organization.